Hello and welcome to another chapter of the Tao Te Ching. We're looking at chapter 51 today, the cycle. Life is a cycle. Our lives often go through cycles. We've talked a lot about those things already in previous chapters. We talked about things coming up and happening again, and us having to once again and again release, and surrender. And that is at the core of us really recovering ourselves, as I talk about. If you followed my work outside of the Tao, we recover ourselves by releasing that which we are under the influence of. And that cycle doesn't happen just with us, right? It happens with each individual, with each being. There is a continual releasing and understanding of who we are. So let's go ahead and read this and see what they're talking about, what the Tao is talking about when it talks about the cycle. Life is a gift received from Tao. It sustains all things as part of that gift. Everything emerges perfect, unconscious, and free, harmonizing with all things, completely maturing in its own time. All things exist and are nurtured through Tao. It fosters and provides for them completely. Tao does not possess or interfere, each expressing and maturing in their own nature. When their experience is complete, Tao receives them again. Okay, so, we've recently, if you're going through this numerically, we've recently talked about death and really embracing death and becoming aware that our life is ultimately tied to death. So when we look at the end of this, when their experience is complete, this relates back to the idea of becoming aware of death. You are not going to die until your experience is complete, even if that means suicide, right? Even if that does mean that you take your own life, like that's an experience that will help complete your journey. And all things that you are going to experience are here to help you mature, right? Because it says earlier, like the end of the first section where it says completely maturing in their own time. If you are dealing with somebody and they're not being mature or not taking steps to love their life, well, that's okay for them. It might not be okay for you. And so maybe you need to step away and you need to do whatever you need to do to protect yourself or all of those things. But life is a gift received from God. This is a gift you're given. And that person that's bringing all this immaturity into your life is being sustained as part of the gift of your life. Right? And so can you see it that way? Can you see this as being part of the gift of your life? Or are you going to see it as being something that's separate? Right? We've already talked about the illusion of separateness, and we've talked about things like that. And so, there's this understanding that we have to take into consideration where that experience is being sustained for my life. And now, what am I supposed to do with that? Do I become the victim of it, or do I start looking inward and saying, well, where is this? Where am I manifesting this? Where am I contributing to this experience? So everything emerges perfect, unconscious, and free. You are free, but everything else is free too. It's free to rain on your wedding day, right? Nature is free. It is free to do that. Your desire to control everything is not part of the gift of life that you've received. Like, yes, it is on your journey to maturing, but that is an immature act, right? Wanting to control other things is an immature act, and you will mature in your own time. And as you will find, if you do want to control things, you will find you butt up against people that don't want to be controlled, but also don't want interaction, and they just fall away. You might not even notice them come in and out of your life at all, because you're not aligned to have interactions. So everything emerges perfect, unconscious, free, harmonizing with all things. Now, how are you harmonizing with all things? Do you recognize all things are being sustained as part of the gift of your life? Or are you seeing yourself as the victim of all things, and those things are just here that you have to control so that you don't become the victim of those things? Completely maturing in its own time. So it will mature. Those things will mature. You will mature, all of those things. And eventually, like a deep breath, it'll just calm the fuck down, right? So this is your life, and it's a gift, and everything that happens in your life is being sustained. All the people that bring those experiences in, those people are being sustained as part of the gift of your life. Don't think of it as a sentence. Think of it as a gift. All things exist and are nurtured through Tao. They exist through Tao, and they are nurtured through Tao. Tao fosters and provides for them completely. You are going to be provided for. If you are afraid that you're not going to have enough money, Tao will give you that experience. If you are afraid, and I'm not saying I'm not saying run to this toxic positivity or whatever, but your life is a manifestation of your beliefs and of how you perceive the world. So everything you have. So when someone comes at you and you become the victim of that person, well, then you're not taking responsibility for your part in it. And then when you say, oh, well, how did I invite this in my life? And then really just open yourself up to the idea that like you are doing this. When you open yourself up to that, you can recognize that everything around you is being sustained as part of a gift. And this gift is for you to become aware, to have awareness. Tao does not possess or interfere, has no intention of possessing you or interfering. You have you. Now, how do you want to experience this? Right? Do you want to experience this as being a victim? Do you want to experience this as, as being responsible? How do you want to experience this? And you can do it any way you want. You can experience things, and you have. Everything that you experience, it's in a package that's coming from your perception. So each being expressing and maturing in their own nature. So if your nature is to argue, you will mature through that arguing, and then maybe not have to argue at some point, or continue arguing and maturing in different ways. But each expressing and maturing in their own nature. You aren't going to tell someone else how to mature. They are going to mature in their own way, and they have to explore those ways. When their experience is complete, when your experience is complete, Tao receives them again, right? That's death. All you're doing is going through and having these experiences, and those experiences are culminating into your life and into who you are and into all that is. And so you get to have this experience. When your experience is complete, you die, and Tao will receive you again. But until you die, that experience still needs to be had. And so that's the cycle of beings, like lives, the cycle of like the short cycle of frustrations and learning, and the short cycles of these experiences, right? Of that we have when people bring shit to us or put stuff on us, or however we want to experience it. Those are cycles. Life is a cycle. Individuals are all within different cycles. And the cycle is maturation. You mature to where you are, and then you let that part of you die. Tao receives it. Now you're new. You move on. Now, we could look at that as actual physical death and, being reborn and all of those sorts of things. Or like the Christians talk about rebirth. And I look at the idea that you're constantly dying to yourself. Every time you learn something new and change yourself, like I was somebody when I was an alcoholic and I quit drinking. I was somebody, I had an identity that was attached to drug use, and then I grew from that. And I had an identity that attached to not being good in school, and I grew from that. I had an identity that called myself a painter, a healer, all these things. That those things die, and then I go through the cycle again. I have a new identity of being more open or whatever, and eventually we'll get to the core, and then there'll be nothing. and then I'll be perfect, right? When I am nothing. It is the being of things, right? Like there's no need to be a thing, nothing out there. So that's the cycle, chapter 51. Thanks for joining me for another chapter of the Tao Te Ching. I am Martin John, and until next time, keep recovering yourself. Thank you.